Hello and welcome to the BuildASoil YouTube channel. Today I've got an FAQ ready. I've got my questions that I've not read yet. Today is FAQ 2. And so if you've not watched these before, what I do is we have the staff pull up questions from the YouTube videos that you guys ask us as part of the season. So these are season 4 questions from the YouTube videos. Let's get started right now and answer the frequently asked questions for this season. Okay, Bowler says, what actually causes purple stems? I know that purple is anthocyanin. Similar to chlorophyll, I believe when plants are no longer using straight chlorophyll but using anthocyanin, it's for a reason. Oftentimes that reason is stress related. It doesn't have to be, but if you look up, Coot sent me a whole textbook just on anthocyanin and how little we know about it, meaning some people would postulate that anthocyanin is created in cold weather, but you can see through cannabis it's created through warm and cold weather depending on genetics. Some indicate that it's like a stress response. So all I'll do is answer your question as far as it goes to growing healthy plants. If you see a purple stem and it's beautiful, malleable green with little purple streaks in it, probably genetic. Purple isn't always a bad thing, but when you see something that was vibrant growth starting to get purple on the top of the stem and slow down in growth, oftentimes that means that we're lacking nutrient uptake. And so I don't want to teach people to be an expert because we are not required to be. Meaning, if you're at home and you're in your house and you're hungry, you don't think, do I need calcium? You just go grab a snack and trust that your stomach's going to be full. And even better, if you know how to read ingredients and have nothing but healthy food in your house, your body will guide you. Obviously, if we're in a starvation situation, fats and proteins and all these things are very, very important. But for a plant, we want to avoid getting to starvation because that's when we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Things turn purple, things turn yellow. And it's because the plant has defense systems built in to say, I won't die. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. And in a human, it might be like being thin doesn't mean you're unhealthy. So similarly, purple doesn't necessarily mean it if it's genetically built in, but there's a clear difference if you're a grower. From purple coming in, you can clearly see lower, very healthy green, and then dark purple up top. It starts to get woodier, not as malleable, it's just losing luster. When I have mom plants that are doing this, it's because I've gone too long without feeding or they're outgrowing their container. In the organic cycle, just like I mentioned with humans, it's best not to pinpoint and just to give the entire buffet full. If you do that, the plant's gonna intelligently choose. You're more of a steward in that regard. So when I think of a plant that might be displaying this, the fast fix is liquid. It's immediately plant available. So you can grab something that's well-rounded. Organic Gem is a great one. It's a liquid fish. People love the product because it creates instant reaction. It's got good NPK, because it's from fish, it has all the micronutrients in there, so you're no longer guessing. Other ones that might be worth looking at would be Organics Alive, would be using combination of like amino acids and maybe a compost tea. If you don't have anything, you've got to grab whatever you've got and start to fill that buffet, if that makes sense. My favorite way is never to get in that situation. Top dress with craft blend and some compost, so I know there's plenty of slow release. And then if I suspect my plant's getting too big for the container, I either bonsai it back before it gets ugly, or I start to feed it liquid feeds to buy enough time so I can bonsai it back before it gets ugly. If you've got a vegging plant doing this and it's small, possibly you overwatered. All the nutrients are getting locked out. The buffet is still full. Now we just need a dry down so it can access those nutrients. The only way to tell is if your container's really heavy and you've just been thinking, man, I'm overwatered. That will cause a lockout. If it's underwatered, it gets burned, not usually purple. It's different than lockout. It's almost like if you put a tablespoon of salt in a glass of water and you take a sip with a full glass, it tastes salty. But if you evaporate all that water out, so there's only this much water left, it is extremely salty. Think of nutrients as salts, not as sodium, but as available chemical compounds that are created by the biology. If those get created by the biology and there's very little water in the soil and the plant's forced to take it up, it can be a bit much and you'll get a little burn. So watering is one reason. Essentially, lockout is the other one. Not having enough of certain ingredients, so I'd like to add them all and let the plant choose. The other reason why I mentioned aminos earlier, like the Yahweh or like the Pure Protein Dry or any soy amino, is that aminos are the building blocks of life and they're included in a lot of the processes. They also are good chelators. So there's many companies, there's textbooks written on foliar spray and how to actively get the nutrients across the cell membrane into the plant. Amino acids are the trick. They help the plant takes it and the other nutrients ride with. So when you're in the soil and you've overwatered, I foliar spray the plant, giving it food it can't get out of its roots right now. That will help it give the energy to push its roots and drink the water, and then it can start digging in. Then we're behind it. Don't overwater again. So amino acids can chelate other things. If you're not overwatered, you've got a mom, it's overgrown, Amino acids can help liberate the last little bits of things out of the soil as well as give it the much needed nitrogen. So those are things I'll just mention. Purple stem is a nutrient related issue. It's not always guaranteed to be a deficiency, but if you know what you're looking at, you know what you're looking at. Purple streaks, healthy green growth, beautiful leaves, probably genetic. Purple and starting to turn downwards, it's gonna be nutrient related. Okay, I hope that helped. Spider-Man. Is it possible to dry outside under a carpet or a gazebo? Thanks. Sure, anything's possible. You can do it. I would much rather have some hyper-dried herb to smoke on than nothing. I mean, I'm sure many of you have purchased brick, picked hair out of it, and still smoked it with seeds being picked out. So if I'm on the road and I have to stop at a gas station and get some shitty coffee, I'll do it. I want some coffee, you know what I mean? That's not my preference. And so drying outside is gonna have a number of challenges to it. Right away, obviously sun. And so you took one of the issues and you mentioned it. You said under a carport or a gazebo. Obviously that would stop rain because you don't want it wet. It would stop the sun, which would volatilize some of your cannabinoids. Now, I don't think it completely ruins it if it gets in the sun, but it ruins the quality. Like the THC will still probably be there, but it's gonna ruin all the taste, flavor. I would encourage you regardless to focus on the environment. If you live in a humid area and you've got an area under a tree with a carport and you can block it so it's not too windy and it's actually 60% humidity and 60 degrees, yes. It doesn't matter where you do this. We just need 60% humidity, 60 degrees, 16 days. If you can't do all of those, focus on the absolute weakest link. So if outdoors it's 110 degrees, I might want to come up with a different game plan. But if your weakest link is, this is my only option, then who am I to say no? Go whip it. Hang that whole plant upside down. And as soon as it's dry, what I would do is like, if it's gonna hyper dry in 2 or 3 days, maybe the 4th day it's already kind of stem snapping, immediately buck that down, put it in tubs, put the lid on and bring it to wherever you're at. Now you can at least slow down the last part of the process. So do whatever it takes. Focus on the weakest link. That's holistic decision making. It'll help you make the right choice. All right, OHM. So why aren't all the pots we use to transplant made translucent so we can see the roots inside and have a good idea when it needs to be pulled? This is a great question. A lot of people do this. I feel it's like training wheels, and when you do it once, it's kind of cool, but then after that you typically don't do it. What I mean is you can tell by the size of the plant. You don't need to see the roots. As above, so below. If the plant's getting healthy and big, the roots are getting healthy and big, you'll see them popping out the cup. But if you'd like to do this, I'll give you some tips. 1, clear causes algae growth. It suffocates the bacteria and biology in the soil, and it's not good for the roots, meaning that's all an invisible world because it's supposed to be. It's below the soil. Never in nature do you have like a little viewing box to see it. Now you can, like people make worm bins that literally have a plexiglass like area where you can watch the worms, and the only way to get the worms there is to have it dark, so they put a cover there. Occasionally for teaching, you can pull the cover and you can see almost like an ant house, all the worms up against the plastic and all the different levels of decomposition. You can make the same for your situation. Here's how we do it. You take a regular clear cup, like a party cup, Solo Cups is the brand at the grocery store. Get the clear ones. I take the bottom of the cup and I cut 4 holes around the bottom. So now all you do is take this exact cup, put it in any other cup you have that's a colored one. A red cup, blue cup, that'll block all of the light. It's a sleeve. Then whenever you want to look at the roots, you just pick it up, pull the bottom cup off. You can look at the roots like a viewing window, drop it back in. It'll block the light, keep the biology happy, keep the algae off the roots. Good to go. What'll happen is you're realizing you're wasting double the cups and you end up not looking anymore once you get comfortable because you can just tell. But I really encourage the experimentation, and a lot of newer growers love seeing that, and it's fun to do, so try that. All right, Travis says, hey Jeremy, love your videos, please keep them coming. I've watched you mix and spray so many different things in your Chapin sprayer. Do you actually clean the sprayer after each use, or do you have separate Chapins for things? Okay, ideally we would clean it and leave the lid off so it's open, and that way it's not just stagnant with moisture in there. The best that I personally ever do is I walk over when it's done, dump it out, whip my hose up in there and spray it, set it down, leave the lid off, and that's it. When I'm doing that, and let's say I've done some fish, or let's say I blow it and I forget, I get busy, I leave it with liquid in it, with pressure on it. Immediately as soon as I find it, I undo the pressure, dump it, then I'll spray with the hose, then I'll grab like some paper towels and I'll put my hand in there and I'll do my best to clean it all out so there's no residue. Otherwise, I don't do much, but it may cost you a Chapin or two and they're expensive, especially with the red one. If you just leave liquid in there and you never tend to it, it's gonna last a year. You're gonna have issues with it. If you get the stainless steel, it should last a lot longer, but best practice to preserve the investment for you, if it's a big deal on budget, please wash it. If it's not, at least do the minimum so you get your money's worth when we're not wasting these things. So to answer it, I'm not very good at cleaning it. It still lasts a very long time for me. So long as I focus on the minimum, at least dumping it out, I can at least clean it next time. But if you just keep nasty liquid in there, it does tend to lower the life of the seals and the life of the metal. So I hope that helps answer your question. Really good question. Waza says, wondering what's your opinion on ants in your pots, good or bad? They do a lot of cleaning, but I've seen colonies ruin other plants. There's just a few that came with the earth and are making a living in my tent. Don't think I'll get too hectic, but not sure what'll happen. I usually just observe. Typically ants are just gonna leave the situation if there's not tons of food. I've never had ants completely take over a grow, but I have had greenhouses where they were coming in hot, taking over seedling trays and just climbing all over stuff, generally creating a problem. I've had vegetable gardens where they will not leave certain plants alone, and it seems like they stunt the growth of the new flowers, just constantly looking for that nectar and that dew. Other times they're actually gonna mine aphids. They will find aphids, they will basically create a relationship where they protect the aphid, so to speak, but mine the sweet sugar dew that the aphids create when they eat your plant. So they will create a situation where the aphids can eat the plant, they protect them, then they eat what the aphids produce. You don't want that happening in your grow at all. So I typically would want to avoid having ants in the grow, just because we don't have an entire ecosystem. I don't want some really strong ants to kind of outcompete whatever I've got going on. However, from personal experience, I've seen a few ants and they just kind of leave towards some better food, maybe elsewhere in my garage or outside, and it's never become a problem. So when it comes to the BuildASoil way, let's never freak out and start causing more harm than we would just by observing. But also, of course, ask a question. Had I told you ants are the end of the world, then I would want you to do whatever it took to get rid of them. I've not had a problem with them. I don't think I ever will have a problem with them, but that does not mean that nature can't be out of balance sometimes and cause an issue. Roly-polies will eat your stalks if they don't have any mulch. So from my experience, I don't think it'll be an issue. From the experience of the world, everything can happen and will happen. So make sure you're observing and make sure it doesn't get too out of hand. Worst case, you might have to use some eradication measures. I want to say spinosad or something that I just never thought of actually eradicated ants, but there's many natural methods to deter them. And so come up with one of those if you notice the colony getting a little out of control. Usually I only see them outdoors in the bottom of containers making homes or whatever, but I just kind of leave them. Golf says, how many rounds of plants can the soil last in relation to the take and bake? The idea would be forever. I don't want to posture and say forever for sure, but I know that GLP Nevada, who we were part of their inaugural process with Matt, and they were getting off the ground just beginning their first cycle, or before that even. Now they're like 30 something cycles deep and many, many years. And all signs are pointing to that they can continue to do it. To me, that's like asking, how long can you keep your farmland? I'm like, hopefully I pass it from generation to generation. Now, if you spray it with pesticides and ruin it, or if you let it get bone dry and then you, like outdoors, it can blow away in the wind. Indoors, I mean, not really. So the idea for the take and bake would be to last forever. Here's what we learned from no-till that can take away from that. What if the texture goes away? When you used to just buy potting soil and it had perlite in it, if you grew 2 or 3 times, the perlite would float to the top or crush, and it would be kind of anaerobic. It would be devoid of air pockets. So how did we solve that? We use pumice. Stays there, creates that aeration. We're good to go. On top of that, we have worms. They create airspace. It's great, good to go. On top of that, we use cover crop, digging roots in, dying, creating airspace. So long as we're keeping in mind the fact that if you were to top dress just unbelievable amounts, you're gonna run out of space and you might have to scrape that off, and then is it really no-till for how many cycles, right? So those are little nuances, but I can't imagine a time that I just throw soil away. It's done. At worst, let's say it just turned into pure worm castings because you had so many worms, you kept it so moist, there was never any downtime, which by the way, I like downtime. It keeps my worm population in check. It kind of provides a season and I can ramp things back up. Downtimes are totally fine for living soil. If you never had downtime, you always had it watered. Worms grew out of control. It was completely a worm bin. Worst case, you dump it out, make 3 times the soil using a third. So you take all your soil, dump it in a pile of peat moss and pumice, whip it up and plant it again, and you're good to go. I've not had to do that, but should that happen, there's always an answer. So like usual, not a direct response, but I still think it answers your question. So thank you for asking. That goes for every single soil that we make. All of our recipes are built for no-till in mind, which means we never want you to throw them away. There's times where we move houses, we change mom plants, or maybe there's a bug, and you might end up throwing some soil away because you're just too scared of it or whatever, or you move and you give it away, and like life happens. So more often than not, we're gonna find something that shortens the cycle of our soil than the foreverness of how long will this last, because it will last decades if it's treated right, all of our recipes. So, man, when I started this company, people were like, you're gonna sell soil and they're not gonna throw it away? What are you gonna do when you sell soil to everybody? They'll all have it already. Well, luckily I've learned that we grow more when we have success, and we start up gardens for our friends, and there's no end to this, at least for a small business like ours, right? So, great question. Rich, would a worm bin do okay in the garage over winter? Yes. Insulated garage, shoot, if it's not insulated, worms like it down to 30 degrees or so. They'll go to the middle of the worm bin. But yes, in an insulated garage, it would be phenomenal. I live in the Northeast US, so not sure if it gets too cold in temperature or if it's an issue in the first place. So enzymes are temperature related, and so you'll see corn jump 3 feet in July because it warms up, and the enzymes and the nutrients can really relay into some massive growth speeds. Same with worms. You can look and see like a perfect mathematic formula. At the ideal temperature with the ideal substrate, it's insane how quickly worms can multiply. You raise the temperature, not gonna happen nearly as fast. You lower the temperature, enzymes stop, they're gonna go into hibernation more so, not gonna multiply as fast. So down to 30 degrees or so, you can just keep your worm bin outside. However, worms will slow down. In the garage, they'll be up to speed. So research temperatures on them, but I think that from answering your question, having the garage is a great way to go. If you live somewhere like California where it's temperate all year, you can just have the worm bin outside. You can do it in ground and have tons of straw as the insulator. You can build an entire straw bale bed around your worm bin to insulate it. You can put a blanket over it. There's lots of ways if you have mildly cold temperatures just to keep it warmer. So hopefully that helps. Last question, No Worry Leaf says a lot of people are against transplanting autos and suggest planting germinated seed directly in Forever Home. What are your opinion? I'd say they're probably right. And here's the thing, we're not an auto expert. I know that shocking an auto and forcing it to flower early is a problem. And so a lot of people, they experience difficulties with autos because they don't follow that rule. And as per example, as you see our episodes coming out, you're gonna see that we broke the cardinal rule. I did it because we had so many seeds to plant. And I also know that a lot of my customers are on no-till, meaning they don't wanna take their super expensive feminized autoflower seed and put it with the worms and rove beetles right in the middle of their cover crop. So going forward, what I would do, whether it's fresh soil or no-till, is expose the area where I'm gonna put the seed and dig a nice hole, put some fresh potting soil and put the seed in. I think you could put it directly in, but I don't wanna cannibalize some of your super expensive seeds, and nature doesn't care about your seeds. If it is too weak and it gets eaten by the soil, it gets eaten by the soil. So to offset that, putting some fresh soil that's slightly less alive will buy you a few days where when it pops and germinates, it has time to kind of get out of the ground. We did autoflowers directly planted into the earth box last cycle and it crushed. This cycle, season 4, out of 4 of them, one of them was a runt. And I'm like, I don't want to like dangle the roots, so I'll wait a couple days. Well, the runt's the only one that triggered, or didn't trigger. It's lusciously growing and it didn't go into flower. The other plants planted on the same day were a little bit bigger in their cup and they triggered. And so once I transplanted, they did grow, but they immediately started crowning, and I think I drastically reduced my yield. Time will tell. I'm not an auto expert. Maybe these just go into flower fast. Part of me thinks that I messed up by starting in a little cup. I did potentially, when their roots hit and started to circle, I triggered them faster than normal. And so I learned lessons in front of you. I share the information with you. Many of you learn them as well. And so maybe you can, if somebody is questioning that, you can send them to our season 4. They can see the difference for themselves between season 3 and 4 on the autos. Also, I've not run these exact genetics before. Correlation doesn't always equal causation, but I believe I can correlate that the difference in the last round and this round is I started them in the cup. And it seems like if I were to do it multiple times, I'd have my proof, but thousands of you have done it. Please drop your comments in this video. If you're an auto expert and you know that for sure the early triggering is caused by that cup restriction, either way, we're gonna get 2 rounds this time. So that'll be pretty cool. You'll see my update in the seasons as we go through season 4. Thank you so much. This has been great. This is FAQ 2, season 4. I really appreciate all the questions that we get. I love that you're interacting together. People on our Patreon and in our Discord are all helping each other, even though I'm so busy. I really wish I could sit there and answer every question. I can't. This is the way to get real questions answered directly to you. And at the same time, there may be hundreds of other people with your same question, and now they get their answer. So thank you for asking them. Don't stop doing it. Put the questions in here. Our staff's gonna go through. We plan on doing many more FAQs this season. Otherwise, until next time, I'll see you guys on the next BuildASoil episode.